All right, Senator Lindsey Graham, as we've been reporting, he passed away over the weekend at the age of 71, and this was a sudden passing evidently caused by an aorta rupture, according to the medical examiner's office, as a result of hardening arteries. And a lot of people are wondering what happens next when it comes to his Senate seat and the impact of his passing on all kinds of international negotiations. We are talking more about it with Professor Stephen Caliendo with North Central College. Professor Caliendo, thank you for being here.
It's good to be with you, Anthony.
All right, so what happens immediately following the death of a U.S. senator? Is it one of those situations where the governor will appoint someone in a temporary?
In South Carolina, that's the case, yeah, and in most states that's the case. And so the governor will appoint somebody on a temporary basis. Typically, there would be a special election, but we're so close to the regular election that this person will serve until the regular election.
Okay, so just a couple of months here. Now, is this expected to change? I mean, he was a very influential senator. I know we've been talking a lot about the breakdown of power in the U.S. Senate. What does it mean from that point of view?
Yeah, it's very close. I mean, and I think that's the importance of the appointment coming fairly quickly, because there's the important piece of legislation that President Trump couldn't help himself from talking about yesterday morning when asked about Lindsey Graham. That is the SAVE Act. He'd still like to get it passed through Congress. Lindsey Graham was a supporter of that particular piece of legislation. And so his replacement certainly would be somebody who would as well. But it's very slim margins. It's unlikely the SAVE Act will pass because of the filibuster rule.
Okay, before we get to Ukraine and Russia, because I know he was deeply involved in negotiations between those two nations, talk about what this means in the short term for the Republican Party as well, because he had a pretty influential spot when it came to access to the administration.
Sure did, yeah. I mean, they were golf buddies. Look, Lindsey Graham, his history will be written, but I think there's some political opportunism that we can't overlook. It doesn't mean it was personal opportunism necessarily, but if you think about people like J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Lindsey Graham, these are people who were very clearly thought that Donald Trump was problematic until they didn't. Then they changed their minds about him and they went a different direction. Lindsey Graham may have done it to have access, and he may, you know, when it's all written, he may have tried to save our democracy a little bit from some of the erosion that President Trump is engaged in. On the other hand, we know he was very much a war hawk. He was in the president's ear, and when we see what's happening in Iran, we can't help but think that Lindsey Graham may have had a lot to do with that decision.
Okay, so that's on one front. How about when it comes to the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine? He had a big impact here as well. And in fact, he had just spoken one-on-one with Volodymyr Zelensky.
He had just come back from Ukraine, and I think that's one of the things when the president spoke to Kristen Welker yesterday, he said that when he talked to Lindsey Graham just an hour or so before his passing, he said he was tired. And he thought he was tired simply because he just come back from Ukraine. It's a long flight. He's not, no spring chicken at 71, but too young certainly to pass. And so he was very much involved in that. I think when people pass, we sometimes think about their legacy. We think about what we can do to honor them. And so maybe one of the things that will happen is that the Senate will rally around Ukraine and try to finish off this war. Ukraine certainly has been making some gains, but a lot of Republicans have been hesitant to have a full-throated endorsement of Ukraine, including the kind of weapons that they're asking for.
Okay. One final question for you. When it comes to filling the role, whoever's appointed here by the governor, in the meantime, does that person usually become the front runner for a future
It could
election?
be. No, not necessarily. It certainly could be that. But look, we already had the primaries in South Carolina. So Lindsey Graham won his primary. He was on the ballot. Now, of course, he certainly can't serve. So they're going to have another primary. They're going to have another process to select somebody to run in November. The appointment process can happen very quickly. They can get somebody down in Washington quickly. But getting somebody on the ballot, there are rules in place in every state, of course, of what it takes to get on the ballot. And once a primary has already taken place, to replace somebody who's been elected. We're having it in Maine, right? I mean, the same situation's happening in Maine for different reasons, of course. But the person who won the nomination and got access to the ballot, Graham Plattner, has pulled out of the race. And so Maine's going to have to find a way, the Democrats in Maine in this case, will have to find a way to replace him on the November ballot.
In a state like South Carolina, and this has been such a solid seat for Lindsey Graham for so many years now.
Strom Thurmond's before that, right?
Before that. So is there any chance that, like, that seat in the future becomes more of a seat that is at play?
No, sir. I don't believe so.
Okay.
No, I mean, South Carolina is reliably red, and certainly on a statewide election basis like this, I think we can count on that seat staying Republican.
All right, Professor Caliendo, thank you for being here on set with us.